Hello, in this video I want to look at using the Couture Creations Treasured Frames die, cut, foil and emboss die from the Modern Essentials collection. So these are dies that they have some flat surfaces, and yours when you buy them will be shiny ones. They won't be these dull black ones, but they have these raised flat surfaces that do the foiling, but also, and emboss, and also a cut line, a cut ridge like you'd have on a die all the way around the edge. There isn't a cut edge in the centre, so this cuts out the shape of the frame. And if I show you on here, so it cuts the shape of the frame out, so you get your intricate edge, but it just spoils the rest. Okay, so this one has been done on a page from a hunky dory little book. Okay, and they're quite thin papers, and then what I do is I put a layer of card over the back when I putting them through the Go press, because this is paper, and if I didn't, the embossing would cut all the way through. So, and then what I do, because I've now got a die cut that matches exactly, I can then stick the two together, and I've got a topper thick enough to put some foam pads behind if I want to. Okay, so this was from a hunky dory little book, their little book of winter florals. It's good quality paper, but it's paper. Okay, so I've also been looking at using 6x6 square paper pads. So I've got the Lacquerelle design from Couture Creations here. Some beautiful papers in here, and I thought I'd use one of these. Okay, again they're a thick paper rather than a card. I'm going to use this rather jolly foil. So I'm going to take my page out of my book. So this one. And then you've got because these are double-sided, then got the decision of which one's going to be showing. So I actually think I'm going to do this on the plain side, okay, in this foil. I think those will look rather splendid together. Okay, so I've got my frame and I've got my foil, and I need my foil just slightly bigger than my frame. Okay, so I'm just going to go there. Now, the frames would fit on an A6 sheet. Okay, so I can, if I've got a piece of paper, I know I want it just slightly bigger than that. So I can just come here, fold that in, and I can put myself a crease along there. Okay. Can you see that? Not very well. Let me do it again. Make a sharper crease. There. So now you can see I've got a line to cut along now. There we go, put the foil out the way. And then I've got a piece of copier paper, okay, printer paper, cheap paper. And I'm going to lay my foil down on that, pretty side down, sorry, pretty side up. And I'm going to take my die, my treasured frames, and lay that on top of my foil. And I want the backing facing up, so I want the ridge side down onto my foil. And the only reason for that is because the back's a little bit sticky where I've had it taped down, and I don't want it to stick to my foil. And then I take my craft knife. I'm going to trim away the excess foil at the edge. I'm using a craft knife, so I'm being very careful to keep an eye on where my fingers are. There we are, piece of foil out of the way. And then I need to trim around the inside. Okay, so holding the foil, the treasure frame plate down on my foil, that'll hold my foil still. So I'm going to start over here. Just, you don't need a lot of pressure, you just need to feel you've made contact with the paper. Just cut around the inside for about probably ½ centimetre, maybe ¼ of an inch between where I'm cutting and the metal of the die. Okay, so I've been all the way around that with the craft knife, and then I'm going to take the die off, lift up the foil. If you have trouble handling foil, try and slick your finger, because you're only going to be touching the backing. And just ease where you've cut. If it takes any more than a little bit of help, then go back and cut it again with a craft knife or with some scissors. I don't know if you can really see what I'm doing here. Here we are. Sort of thing you'd naturally do facing yourself so you can see what you're doing, but then the camera can't see it. There we are. So my middle piece of foil I can keep to use later, and then I can take my piece of pattern paper and decide where I want my foil. I'm going to go straight over this side. I want a bit of the paper sticking out past the foil so that I can tape to it. Now you could do this with strips of foil, but I actually find it takes longer because they keep moving. So by the time I've actually got them all sitting where I want, I've put them all down about 3 times or more. Okay, just be careful that you're not going to include that bit of waste at the edge. It's useful to have it there. Again, you can tape to it. But I don't want to be putting my foil down on it. So, piece of tape. Piece of tape. But here I'm just going to tape onto there. And in this corner, well, do I really need a piece? But just about got an edge showing. So I'll tape to there. Okay. Now if you want to trim this piece off at this stage, you can. Okay, so that's there. I'll put my piece of scrap paper, and I just keep reusing it until it really is fiddly to move about because it's got so many cuts. So my go press. So on here, get it to stay still. On here I have, it's hot so I'm using a matchstick, pick it up with. I've got thin metal shim from my die cutting machine and 2 pieces of 300 GSM card. Right, I just keep reusing those. You can use 2 thin metal shims if you have 2 thin metal shims. So that just goes on there. And that's been warming up while I've been preparing my foil. So now my die goes that way up, so the metal to metal. Okay, and then I've got a piece of card that I've cut it just over size so that can go on the back. If you're not sure, use a bit bigger piece of card. That was hot, so do be careful. Just touch my metal plate. Right, that should be fine. So I'm going to close the lid, and the die needs to come up to temperature, so maybe leave it to warm for, I don't know, maybe a minute. The red light's just come back on, so I'll definitely leave it till the green light comes back on, and then maybe a little bit longer. Usually by the time I've got the die cutting machine and cleared enough space to use it, it's ready to go. So 30 seconds to a minute, let that die warm through. So I'll just get my die cutting machine. Okay, so that's warmed through. So I'm going to put this through my die cutting machine, and I can feel a good bit of pressure, but I can still wind the handle smoothly. Yeah. I'll just bring the camera back closer to my mats and point it down. There we are. There we are, right, so I can see, okay, so this, it's cut at this end completely. It isn't quite cut at that end. So what I could do is just very carefully turn it round. Okay, and run it back through the die cutting machine. Do it that way, because it might not have foiled in that corner either. Sometimes that happens. So I'm just going to bring it back to temperature and roll it once more. There we are. Okay, so this is come up to green lights back on now. Out of the way. Okay, let's bring the camera back in. Okay, so I can see now that's cut all the way around, so I'm just going to take the edges, just pull that off and put the hot plate out of the way. So if I now just hold this by the card, let's flip it over, I can literally just push the bottom out. There we are. That needs to cool down before you peel your card and your foil off it, but don't forget to do that. Okay, and my white card, that's now cut cleanly away, but it's separate. Okay, so it's cut me an exact copy, and I will use them to stick together. Okay, so on here I now need to peel my foil. Let's put that to one side, and I can just, sometimes the foil just falls off, sometimes it's kind of stuck. There we are. Peeling the foil never gets old. Oh, isn't that lovely? I like that. Okay, so I used a different page from this, from the Couture Creations Lacquerelle 12 by 12 pad, and they always, sorry, not 12 by 12, 6 by 6 pad, and they tend to do one of those with all of their collections. But you know, it's one of those things, whatever you've got. So I used a different page from the Lacquerelle pad with some satin finish rose gold foil. Let me just put the camera up a little bit. There we are. Some satin finish rose gold foil on this one. Okay, exactly the same technique, and then I've put die cut elements behind there as decoration using the bit of paper I cut off from the side. What do I do with it? So the equivalent of that piece goes there, and then the square I've done using the a small corner die from the C'est La Vie collection. I have to think for a moment. I've done a separate video about how to do that and get all those corners perfectly placed. Okay, and then I've just added a sentiment using the same cardstock, and the die cut, I've just used my backing paper to decoupage the die cut. Okay, so that's how I put that card together. Okay, so all of your paper pads are things you can foil onto. Now, not all paper takes foil in the same way, but in my experience, most of it does. So experiment with what you've got. Different colours, different papers, use them in different ways. Okay, but that's the technique. When you're using papers, use a sheet of card at the back, and then at the end you can stick them together, because then you've got something rigid enough to put foam pads on the back of to use as your topper. Okay, thank you for watching.